Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. I've been in the world of crypto for just over 2 years now. It was November of 2017 when I first decided to make the incredibly irresponsible decision to invest in cryptocurrencies. Well, actually, at first, the way I did it, I think it's probably fair to state it that way. I remember it was on a whim, and I was like, maybe I'm throwing money away, it's gambling, I'm going to just do a little tiny baby boo bit, throw a tiny bit of money, and then I'll just learn about it and go from there. And it was so little that it didn't matter. You know, I bought a little bit of Ethereum, an entire Litecoin, and a minuscule amount of Bitcoin, so nothing crazy at all. And I thought that would be the end of it, but then I researched it and got more and more into it and found out, oh my gosh, there's actually something to this whole thing. Specifically, when I came around to researching XRP, I wasn't completely sold that anytime soon people would be using crypto in place of fiat currency. That's one use case, but they found out what could be done with what the plans that other developers building on top of specific blockchains had, in this case, of course, XRP. And I entered this world, the naivete of a young Moon Lambo, had no idea. I just thought, hey, all these people were forward thinking. We're in the world of crypto, right? We're in the world of crypto. Let's all be friends and learn from each other. Oh, God, no. Human nature is running rampant here as it could, I guess, anywhere else. Tribalism. I found out just how insanely tribal it was, and so I came in no ideology whatsoever. I just came in and was like, facts are leading me this direction. XRP could be adopted, and it actually is indeed being adopted in terms of actual utility today. It's actually happening. What I thought would happen, because, mind you, XRapid was in the beta version at that time, it's actually happening now. And price action hasn't caught up with the actual value of that, but hey, whatever. But it's just funny to me because I had no idea just how tribal various cryptocurrency communities were against one another. Very vocal, especially on Twitter. And so when I came across this headline, oh wow, it caught my attention right away. And it's interesting. This is an article from AMB Crypto, and it's titled, Ripple CEO Denounces Unhealthy Tribalism and Religiousness Within Crypto. Now, come on, I'm willing to bet that the topic of this and how much probably most of you despise it or dislike it, I'm willing to bet that this resonates with a lot of you. So I'm going to run through this and share with you Brad Garlinghouse's thoughts, and then I'm going to wrap up the video with this article from CoinDesk. Japanese conglomerate SBI injects a 7-figure sum into Securitize. But before speaking any further on the matter, if you would please delicately tap that like button, and if you are a fan of Ripple and XRP and you do not care for tribalism in the world of crypto, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. I encourage diversity of thought here. I think it's okay to disagree with one another as long as we're just being adult about it. Having a different opinion than somebody else is not something that should offend somebody here, you know? Let's just go ahead and dig in. At the recently conducted Swell conference by Ripple, Jay Kim interviewed Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse on the Jay Kim Show. During the interview, Garlinghouse spoke about the idea of an internet of value, where value moves the same way information does today. Echoing the statements made by one of the panelists at the Swell conference, Garlinghouse said, quote, "You can watch a North Carolina game from anywhere in the world, anytime, yet you can't send a wire on Sunday." No kidding, right? The Ripple CEO also spoke about how there are around $10 trillion pre-funded in accounts around the world, effectively the oil fueling the engine that is correspondent banking. And I did talk about that a little bit in another video. Let me go ahead and move past that. Garlinghouse also expanded on how anything which causes confusion limits success, and that when they go live with a bank, they're actually deploying technology behind a firewall and flying out integration engineers on site to help with the deployment. With respect to cross-border transactions, Kim spoke of how there are people who fear the volatility of XRP could lead to a difference in value transferred over time. Garlinghouse responded by stating that transactions using low volatility assets such as fiat currency over a longer period of time can end up having higher volatility risk, right? And by the way, they actually did, and I covered this in a video too. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but they actually worked out specifically the math. They used real equations to prove that it's more risky to not use XRP as a bridge currency due to volatile risk as it pertains to the traditional legacy system of the correspondent banking system. But here's a quote from Brad Garlinghouse. It takes 2 to 3 days to transact, and somebody is taking that volatility risk. When you do a fiat transaction, somebody is selling you that volatility risk, and it's embedded in the price. Over a very, very short amount of time, it turns out there's less volatility risk in an XRP transaction than there is in fiat. Right? And then he added that this might be a risk for Bitcoin as transactions are relatively slow when compared to XRP. However, eventually, someone will sell a product to risk mitigate that, such as a credit default swap. And here's another quote now. I'm not sure that will ever be needed. I don't know. But right now, because it's so fast, we haven't seen it to be a problem. We're doing many millions of dollars a week over on-demand liquidity. We're way past the experimentation phase. This is actually real. It is working. It's at scale. No kidding, right? That's why I always like to say, XRP, period, is the only cryptocurrency being used in the commercial production of anything. Period. Garlinghouse also spoke of how he thinks there remains a lot of tribalism and religiousness within crypto, which is probably not healthy for the ecosystem as a whole. He added that Ripple's success depends on how well the whole space thrives. And here's the quote from him on this now. I want a lot of these projects to work. I think a lot of them are still in experimentation phase, but I think it's good for Ripple and it's good for XRP. It's good for Bitcoin. It's good for Ether if everybody is doing well. Can you not appreciate that? Like, that is the adult approach to all this. You know, and as David Schwartz recently said, there's a video clip actually, how did he phrase it? I might have to paraphrase. I don't know if I'm going to hit the nail exactly on the head with this, but he was talking about the concept of, you're never going to build your own project up by tearing other projects down. And to me, that absolutely rings true. Anyway, Jake Kim also asked Garlinghouse if XRP could have just been a private corporate digital asset that wasn't offered to the public. Garlinghouse responded by stating that it was necessary to develop liquidity organically for XRP before going live with the products with private institutions. And here's a quote. We often will work with market makers to help make sure there's plenty of liquidity and the spreads are tight, but if there's zero liquidity, that would actually make it hard to enter a new market. So to put this another way, the reason that this actually matters, the reason that there wasn't just some sort of private coin, is because it would just be another walled garden instance anyway, requiring trust. Because you got to understand at the core of it, and this is my own original thought, if you ask me what the biggest problem is as it pertains to the correspondent banking system, as it pertains to moving money, converting from one fiat currency to another, what is the biggest problem? My answer is that it requires trust. And what happens with XRP is it eliminates the need for that trust, for that portion of the transaction. It absolutely removes it. Other than that, I mean, yeah, you got to trust the partners that you're aligned with, but not monetary. Like, you're talking about trusting that an exchange is going to function. And then beyond that, you're trusting, as it pertains to the XRP portion of it, that cryptography works. You've really removed the biggest hurdle, which is simply trust. That's it. All right, next here's a tweet from Crypto Man on Twitter. In the years to come, Ripple will only offer on-demand liquidity as part of their RippleNet offerings. All partners will be persuaded to use on-demand liquidity. All the writings on the wall. And then tagged me, along with fellow XRP YouTubers Kevin Cage and the Digital Asset Investor. So I want to give you a shout-out, Crypto Man. Thank you very much for tagging me. I very much appreciate that. And so the concept you're talking about here, I'm not completely sure, to be honest, if I read this right, but you're right. In the years to come, Ripple will only offer on-demand liquidity as part of their RippleNet offerings. If you meant for that to be read as in the future, it would be a requirement. If that's the case, I would disagree. And if that's not what you meant, then that would already be what's happening. So that's why I was kind of thinking maybe that is what you meant. And I apologize if I'm just being an idiot and not reading this in a way that it should obviously be read, which is always a possibility, right? My name is Moon Lambo after all. But Part of the problem when Ripple started their path down, just their path of solving the train wreck that is the corresponding banking system, they initially did try to make banks and financial institutions utilize a cryptocurrency, XRP, as part of the transactions, and there was just tremendous resistance. You can imagine, first of all, there's no real infrastructure built out to that point. Several years ago, you can imagine, things were even more sketchy sounding on the surface. Nobody knew anything about this type of thing. A lot has changed over the last few years, and so you don't have the same amount of psychological friction, if you will. But back then, anyway, they realized, nope, let's not go that route, because if XRP as on-tap liquidity, it's now called on-demand liquidity, is a real solution, then ultimately, banks and remittance companies the world over would want to use it. And so they thought, if it's really good, then it will happen eventually. And they started with the messaging portion of this, which previously known as Xcart, and just kind of went from there. But when you write, all partners will be persuaded to use on-demand liquidity, all the writing is on the wall. If you're just talking about a transfer over time to on-demand liquidity, yeah, I'm on board there. Because here's my perspective. If you're talking about that versus pre-funding of accounts, there's not going to be a whole lot of instances in which it would be cheaper to go through the legacy system for settlement. So, yeah, I think that is a salient point. Anyway, thanks again for tagging me, Crypto Man. I do appreciate it. All right, next I got this article from XRP Crypto Wolf. Shout out to you, good sir. It's titled, Japanese Conglomerate SBI Injects 7-Figure Sum into Securitize. All right, Japanese financial services conglomerate SBI Holdings has invested a 7-figure sum into Securitize, a provider of services for issuing digital securities. The investment, announced Tuesday, comes just 2 months after Securitize announced it had raised a combined $14 million from Santander Bank and MUFG. The exact amount injected by SBI wasn't disclosed, but Carlos Domingo, Securitize's founder and CEO, told CoinDesk that there are 6 zeros at the end of the figure. He said his company intends to use the funds in part to build out its new Japan office, which will be open by the end of the year. We're going to do business there, and that involves not only finding customers in Japan, but also localizing the technology and making sure you know the language for the next similar type of integrations that you might be looking at, he said. Securitize already has a subsidiary set up in the country, though. Domingo expects to launch with a small crew initially. In a statement, SBI Holdings CEO and President Yoshitaka Kitao, I'm sure many of you are familiar with him, said his company strongly believes in the future of digital securities, citing Securitize as one leading player in the industry. And I've talked about Securitize recently. In fact, I believe that's the company that Ripple teamed up, and I think that's the one when Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple CEO, was speaking at the Economic Club of New York. I think that's the name of the company that he forgot, and he goes, "Oh, the CEO's going to call me up and rake me over the coals," or whatever he said about it to that effect. I'm pretty sure that was the one. Anyway, the move is part of a broader shift in Domingos' view. A few years ago, he said much of the interest around the space came primarily from those already sold on the ideas of blockchains and initial coin offerings. Now, it seems there is more mature interest around the security token offerings and similar tools, Domingo said. Here's another quote. "I think that the fact that SBI is putting their faith and investing in a company like us is signifying the move towards more adoption of security tokens. And indeed, the maturation of this asset class is increasing, maybe even at an exponential pace to whatever degree." But that's it for this video. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Do appreciate it. I'm not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!